This will be for the con exercise, graph sinusoidal functions. So before doing this exercise, you want to be familiar with the basic sine and cosine graphs. And I have another video on this. All right, just to rehash real quick, the one in red right here is the sine of x, and the one in blue is the negative sine of x. And then for the cosine right here, the one in red is y equals cosine of x. The one in blue is negative cosine of x. So when you multiply the whole function by a negative, it just gets reflected about the x-axis. And the x-axis acts like a mirror. All right, so they want us to graph this function here. And it says for the interactive widget, one point is an extremum, in other words, a max or a min, and the other point is going to be the midline. Okay, so if you look at the graph, this one point always has to be the maximum or the minimum, and the other point will be the midline. So the functions that they give us in this exercise will be in this form. Okay, you can also replace sine with cosine. But I'm going to be doing these problems with a few steps. All right, the first step on the graph, I'm just going to plot the basic sine or cosine function. All right, that's going to be step one. Step two, we're going to find the period. And that's going to equal 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. Okay, b is going to be the number that's multiplied by x. Step three, we're going to find, or really I should say use, the value of a to adjust the graph. All right, so the value for a would be the number that's multiplied by the function. And then finally, step four, we're going to use the value for c to shift the function. I'll just write fn to shift the function up or down. All right. So just a quick breakdown on this particular equation, or I'll just do it in general. This letter here will determine the period. This letter here will give it a vertical stretch or compress. And this letter here will shift the function up or down. All right, so once I plot the basic sine or cosine function, I'm going to use this letter first, and this letter second, and this letter third on the end, as you will see. All right, so the first step is to find the period. And that's going to be 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. And the reason it's absolute value is because period is a distance, and distances are always positive. So it's going to be 2 pi, and b is the number that's multiplied by x. So this right here is your value for b. All right, we're dividing fractions. Keep, change, flip. So keep 2 pi, change division to multiplication, and flip the 1/6 to 6 over 1, or just 6. 2 times 6 is 12, and we still have the pi left over. So the period is 2 pi. However, if you look at the graph, All right, I'm going to have to erase what I have here. If you look at the graph, the points we have that said one is a max and one is a midpoint or midline and the other one is a max or a min. So really, the distance from here to here, that distance is really only 1/4 of the period. Okay, and then from here to here, that's also 1/4 of the period. All right, because remember, period goes a full cycle. So the period would start here, it would go down to the min, up to the max, and then end here. So this segment right here is only 1/4 of the period. All right, we said the whole period was 12 pi. So 1/4 of the period is just going to be 3 pi. All right, so this distance right here has to be 3 pi. Now, I forgot the first step. This is a cosine function, so we want it to match the basic cosine function, all right? The cosine function, you need to be familiar with it. It starts at 1, and yeah. Let me see. No, this one. Okay, this other point is supposed to be the max. Yeah, it starts at 1, and that's basically it, just like that. Okay, the cosine function, it starts at 1, heads down to the midline, minimum, and then comes back up. All right, so we said 1/4 of the period is 3 pi. So we're going to start at x equals 0, the y-axis, and move this. Left click on it and drag it. And I'm having trouble here. Left click on it and drag it. All right. So that is 1/4 of the period from x equals 0 to 3 pi. Now, the value for a is -2. So not only is the function flipped because it's negative, but it's also multiplied by 2. All right, so all the y values get multiplied by -2. Here, y equals 0. 0 times -2 is just 0. But right here, we move this down to -2. Okay, it was at 1 times -2. That's -2. Remember, the reason it was at 1, we started with the basic cosine function. Y equals cosine of x. And finally, -5 shifts everything down by 5 units. Okay, so the -2 shifted down by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this one is at 0. Move it down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's going to be it. Okay, so here we have a sine function. Let's start by drawing the basic sine function. And we know that sine function, it starts at the origin and it starts by heading toward the maximum. Okay, so we basically have it already. We just didn't adjust for the period yet. Okay, so the sine function starts at the origin and heads to the max. All right, let's see. Next step is to find the period. Okay, that's going to be 2 pi over the absolute value of b. And we see that b is the number that's multiplied by x. So that's just pi over 8. So 2 pi divided by pi over 8. Keep, change, flip. We're going to keep 2 pi. We're going to change division to multiplication. And we're going to flip pi over 8. Okay, pi divided by pi cancels, and 2 times 8 is just 16. Now, just like last time, we're only, the points we're adjusting are only the midline and the max. So going from here to here is only going to be 1/4 of the period. Okay, the full period will be all the way from here to here, to here, all the way to here. That'd be the full period. But we're only doing a fourth of the period, okay? So we need to take a fourth of 16. And of course, that is just 4. All right? So this distance right here should be 4 units in the horizontal direction. All right? So I'm going to take my maximum, and I'm going to move it over to 4. Okay? And now you can see this distance starts at x equals 0, and it goes to x equals 4. All right? So now the period is adjusted. We have the basic sine function. We did that first. Now let's look at the value for a. It's negative sine. So basically, this is just a negative 1. All of the y values get multiplied by negative 1. All right? So this is at y equals 0. 0 times negative 1 is just 0. And this one is a mistake. This should have been at 1. Okay? We started with the basic sine function. So the maximum should have been at 1, but we're multiplying it by negative 1. So this 1 times negative 1 brings it down to negative 1. All right? So that right there is what we have so far. Finally, the point on the end, the part on the end, the plus 7, you add 7 to all the y values. It shifts the entire graph up by 7. All right, so keep this one, and we're at 0. We're going to go to 7. All right, bring it up to 7. And this one here is at negative 1. You can't see it. Add 7, so negative 1 plus 7 is going to be at 6. So that's it.